Let's get one thing out of the way before we get started. You are currently watching gameplay of the recently released Division 2, but on the surface a lot of people may say, well, it looks remarkably similar to the first game, and it's hard to disagree. It absolutely looks very similar in a lot of ways, and honestly, it is similar in a lot of ways, but don't let that fool you. While this game may be similar to the first, it makes huge improvements in a lot of ways, and this is not just with a new setting. I was very impressed with what they've done here. There's an awful lot of stuff to do in the second game, and lots of it opens up to you as you get towards the end game and after it, something that Ubisoft were keen to correct from the first game. So let's start with the basics. Visually, the game looks amazing. To be fair, so did the first one. It's hard to put across how detailed the game environments actually are. It really is impressive. Not only that, but while playing through the campaign, you come across plenty of varied environments, from the Air and Space Museum Planetarium, which looks just fantastic, the American History Museum, including the Vietnam exhibit, to subway areas, football stadiums, and even a Mars exhibit. They really did a great job of varying your locations as best as possible until you get to the end game. There really isn't any areas that are used multiple times. More impressive than that though is that this is all achieved with no loading screens. I say no loading screens. I did have the odd black loading screen when in an elevator from time to time, but it was very rare and extremely quick. Apart from that, you could leave your headquarters at the White House, move across the city and do a mission in the subway, leave, do another mission or a side quest or one of the numerous activities, all without a single loading screen. Obviously, they're hidden away here somewhere. The game needs to load stuff, but it's being done so well that as a player, you simply don't notice. And then we've got the movement and controls. Just like with the first game, the movement is very fluid and the cover mechanics work great. You can blind fire over cover as well, which you're probably going to need to use quite a lot. When it comes to gunplay, you need to accept that some enemies are going to take a bit of damage, despite the game being set in a realistic version of Earth. It's something that's going to be a bit odd, that you're putting 30 or even sometimes 100 rounds into a human target, but that's just the game. I'd say enemies take a bit less bullets than they ever did in the first game, although when you reach max rank, enemies certainly start taking more damage. And enemies are color coded, with red enemies being the weakest, and then purple enemies have armor that you're going to need to deplete, and yellow having the highest shield counts, or sometimes armor that prevents damage being dealt, which you need to handle first. You may have enemies with grenade launchers, sniper drones, or even large enemies that run at you with a chainsaw. Not only that, I feel that the AI sometimes sense when you're in trouble, as they often push you at your worst moments to keep the pressure up. There's an element of danger here at times. There are even certain enemies that can revive their fallen teammates, which is a nice touch. Also, make no mistake about it, red bar enemies may be the weakest, but if they sneak behind you, they're going to deal a ton of damage, and God forbid they run at you with a melee weapon and land a hit, because then you will be in trouble. Now when it comes to weapons, well, you're going to be sport for choice. This game has got a huge amount of play with DMRs, snipers, shotguns, assault rifles, SMGs, the whole shebang. There's a lot of weapons in the game, and with all of them being real weapons, you're going to see M4s, AKs, Vectors, Paras, and even, if you're lucky, a Tommy gun. I can't help but feel that some of the LMGs are just better in certain circumstances though, because if you get an LMG with 100 rounds in the mag, or maybe 120, if you've got certain perks or talents on it, it's just so good at dealing with enemies that have armor and or breaking armor on the larger targets. Now there's a lot of choice in this game when it comes to your loadouts. You can of course pick 2 weapons and then a sidearm. Higher tier weapons are also going to have talents on them that may offer up some special perks. The same with gear, including armor and backpacks. As well as having special perks, each item is going to either push you forward in armor stats, damage or skill, and if you've got a higher skill rating, for example, then your abilities are going to be more effective. It's an interesting trade-off at working out what sort of build you want to go for in this game, and you can unlock loadout slots as well, so you can set up different builds in case you wanted to change between 2 or 3, for instance. Not only that, but you can also change up your skills, which range from deployable turrets to healing drones and even a foam gun. Yeah, there's quite a large amount of variation here. And when you get to max level, which in this game is level 30, you can then choose a specialization or a signature weapon. So you can choose either sharpshooter, which grants you a TAC 50C sniper rifle, or survivalist, which offers up an explosive tipped crossbow, and then finally demolitionist, which gives you the M32A1 multi-shot grenade launcher. Each of these specializations offer up an entire perk system which you can unlock as you go along, and that doesn't even become available until you reach level 30 anyway. Now, from my time playing the game, I think the biggest plus with The Division 2 is that there's just a ton of stuff to do there. There's loads to do. There are main story missions, then of course you have side missions that you unlock along the way, not to mention more side missions that become available when you reach level 30. And then across the world, you've got control points that are held by enemies that you have to take control of, as well as lots of other side missions, including regaining enemy territory and stopping enemy speaker broadcasts. And then when you reach level 30, these become way more dynamic. Enemies will regain control of these areas, and if you complete activities around, say, a control point, then that control point will have its alert level raised up to a maximum of 4. If you attack one that's at max level, it's going to be considerably harder to complete, but if you do, the loot will also be significantly better for you. They do reward you with a supply room for completing them though. You can also complete projects which are ongoing assignments that may require you to do a few activities in an area or restock a control point, and if you complete them, you get a reward. And you've also got bounties, which, as the name may suggest, has you chasing down high value targets, and some of them are quite challenging. So all of these activities will drop loot, so you can find what you want from them in so many different sources, and that's just great for replayability. If you get a high-end drop and like the talent on it, but not so much the actual piece or weapon, then you can transfer them between similar items in the recalibration area, or even craft items at the crafting station. There are lots of ways to get the items that you want here, so you're not always forced down a specific path or mission to get there. I like that. Now at the moment there are 3 strongholds in the world that unlock at varying intervals as you reach certain XP levels, and these are big missions that require some time to complete. But when you reach level 30, these change up again. Another enemy faction takes over the city called Black Tusk, and then this means that you need to do missions called invaded missions, and each stronghold needs you to complete 2 invaded missions, and then you can complete the stronghold once more, but this time facing off against Black Tusk. Once you've done this invaded stronghold, your world moves up a tier. So you start off at the base tier, and every stronghold that you complete will increase up another world tier, which makes the world harder. But, of course, the loot better. Unlike in a lot of other loot shooters, gear grinding games like these, the content can dry up when you reach the max level. But I think that Massive and Ubisoft have just done a great job this time around of giving you plenty of things to do, and some of those only actually start and begin once you reach level 30. In fact, I'm pretty sure that some enemy types don't even appear until level 30. Now, alongside all of that which I've just mentioned, the game is also going to feature raids for the first time, and these will be challenging 8-player missions, and they're different from the incursions that featured in the first game, as Ubisoft have been quite clear to use the term raids this time around, and anyone who's played, let's say, Destiny or Destiny 2 will appreciate how much hype there is around a raid in this genre of game. Of course, the main issue with The Division is that it's grounded in reality, and this was one of my main complaints with the first game. So what can it offer up in terms of mechanics and variety that will make a raid really interesting? Only time will tell. That being said, the game's director, Matthias Carlson, has said that they're more like traditional raids, saying that they built raids to have bespoke mechanics, boss fights, and to do more with what we have in the game. So based on what he said there, and from my experience playing through the game, I'm optimistic that they're going to deliver. Now, what I've mentioned there doesn't even take into account the Dark Zone, which is the kind of PvP, PvE area, and it has changed a bit this time around. So now there are 3 Dark Zones that you unlock by doing missions along the way. 2 of the Dark Zones have Normalization enabled, which means that it's not going to take into account your super powerful weapons and gear, but instead it will leave players on a more even playing field, even if they've played the game a lot less and have worse gear overall. But there is, however, a Dark Zone that will take into account players' hard work, so that's where you can go in, flex your muscles and show off your overpowered gear. But I think one of the biggest gameplay changes that's for the better, and something that you're going to notice the most, is that players are no longer going to be able to run away and heal on the move like they did in the first game, because the healing system has changed. So no longer can you just heal on the move, but now you've got to use a key to replace an armor shield. And so fighting in the dark zone is not going to be quite as frustrating as it was in the first game, because there were just so many cat and mouse moments where you were just shooting, doing damage, running away, they would heal, you'd shoot, they'd run away, they'd heal, and it was quite annoying. But not really noticed that as of yet in The Division 2. And there are also dedicated PvP modes this time around if you want to check those out. Now, for all of the praise that I think this game deserves, it isn't without its issues in my opinion. I don't really like the mod system on the weapons all that much. The attachments have benefits and drawbacks, such as plus 20 stability but minus 10 accuracy, of course depending on the weapon type, and this may be more viable or ending up making the weapon worse in an area that you don't like. And I don't dislike the idea. I know that there's got to be a trade-off, but sometimes some of the mod drawbacks don't always make sense to me. There's also been a few bugs that I've noticed along the way, including the AI being a bit odd and getting stuck in cover, a few odd crashes that I've had too here and there since one of the recent patches, and abilities not working as you would expect. But for the most part, I've had a great time with this game. I think it's fair too to say that during the campaign there really isn't a whole variety in things that you've got to do. The environment's beautiful, unique and exciting, but in terms of enemies, it is mostly still the same as the first game, hold mouse 1 and deal DPS, minus a few small mechanics here and there. You could argue that while the representation of Washington is visually impressive, perhaps it's not quite as exciting as the original's New York setting, but maybe that's subjective. Overall though, The Division 2, I think it's a definite improvement on the first game, and I've enjoyed my time with it so far, and I'm loving the endgame content. But the raids though, that's what's really going to keep me interested. We'll see how they go down. And that's all for today folks. Do let me know your thoughts down below if you've played The Division 2 so far. Are you enjoying it as much as I did? Let me know. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.